The snow fell in heavy, relentless sheets over the frozen streets of Busan's outer districts, where the Han River's icy breath mingled with the salt of the sea. Neon signs flickered through the white veil, casting erratic glows on the warehouses that lined the waterfront like silent sentinels. Min Jae Kang, head of the Kang Syndicate, gripped the wheel of his black SUV tighter, the leather creaking under his gloved hands. At 42, he was a man forged in the shadows of Korea's underworld. Shipments of contraband slipping through customs like ghosts, rival crews dismantled with surgical precision. But tonight, the storm had grounded his convoy, forcing him to navigate the back roads alone after a late meeting at the docks. His headlights cut through the blizzard, illuminating a crumpled shape ahead on the roadside. Min Jae slowed, cursing under his breath. Drifters, a setup. He scanned the mirrors. No tails, no glints of scopes from the tree line. The shape didn't move. With a sigh that fogged the glass, he pulled over, the tires crunching into a snowbank. He stepped out, the wind whipping his wool coat like a flag in battle. The cold bit into his face, sharp as a blade, carrying the faint, acrid tang of exhaust from distant factories. It was a child, a tiny girl, no more than 5, curled into a ball beside a discarded cardboard box, her dark skin stark against the white drifts. She wore a thin pink jacket, soaked through, and mismatched mittens that barely covered her fingers. Snow dusted her braided hair like powdered sugar. Min Jae's pulse quickened, not from fear but from the wrongness of it. Kids didn't end up here, not in this weather, not without purpose. He knelt, keeping his distance, his breath visible in the sodium glow of a nearby street lamp. "Hey, little one," he said softly in Korean, then switched to English, hedging his bets in this port city of transients. "You okay?" Her eyes fluttered open, wide and glassy with exhaustion. She shivered, pushing herself up on numb arms, her small frame trembling like a leaf in the gale. "Sir." The word came out in a whisper, accented with a lilt he couldn't place, American maybe, or something from the islands. She rubbed her eyes, flakes melting on her lashes. "Mommy said you'd help." Min Jae froze. The words hung in the air, heavier than the snow piling on his shoulders. Who the hell was her mommy, and why him? He wasn't in the habit of playing savior. His world was one of debts collected and loyalties enforced, not bedtime stories. But something in her gaze, trusting, unyielding, tugged at the edges of his carefully armored heart. He thought of his own daughter, lost years ago to a rival's bullet during a warehouse hit gone wrong. That memory was a scar, hidden but ever present. "Come on," he murmured, shrugging off his coat and wrapping it around her. It dwarfed her, the silk lining brushing her cheeks. She didn't resist, just leaned into him as he scooped her up, her weight feather-light against his chest. The warmth of her small body seeped through his shirt, a stark contrast to the chill seeping into his bones. He carried her back to the SUV, the door slamming shut like a vault. Inside, the heater blasted to life, filling the cabin with the scent of heated leather and faint cologne. As he buckled her in the passenger seat, piling blankets from the back over her lap, she mumbled again, her eyelids drooping. "Mommy said, the man with the dragon tattoo, he'd keep us safe." Her finger pointed weakly to his wrist, where a faded ink dragon coiled beneath his cuff, a mark known only to those in the know, a symbol of the Kang clan's unyielding grip on the smuggling routes from Incheon to the Yellow Sea. Min Jae's jaw tightened. Someone had sent her, a rival planting a trap, a desperate informant. He slid into the driver's seat, the engine rumbling to life, and pulled out slowly, the wipers slapping rhythmically against the windshield. The city lights blurred into streaks as he headed toward his safe house on the hills overlooking the port, a fortified penthouse disguised as a luxury condo, with guards rotating every 4 hours and cameras covering every angle. "Who's your mummy?" he asked, keeping his voice steady, eyes flicking to the rear view. Empty roads, but the snow hid everything. "Ilara," the girl whispered, burrowing deeper into the coat. "She works at the club. The Blue Lotus. Said if anything happened, find the boss man. You're him, right?" The Blue Lotus. Minjay knew it. A seedy karaoke bar on the docks. A neutral ground for deals between syndicates. Ilara. The name rang a vague bell. A dancer? No, a waitress, he'd heard whispers. Black American, come to Korea chasing some dream, ended up in the underbelly scraping by. But why point her kid to him? He wasn't known for charity. His code was clear. Protect the family, crush the threats. Innocents? They were collateral, best kept at arm's length. The SUV climbed the winding road, the storm howling around them. Sodium lamps dotted the path, their orange haze turning the snow into a swirling vortex. Minjay's mind raced. Check the plates on any vehicles nearby, scan for bugs in the car. His burner phone buzzed in the console, a text from his second, Ji-hoon. "Convoy delayed. Storm's a beast. You good?" He typed back one-handed. "Found something. Blue Lotus connection. Vet it." The girl, Lila, she murmured her name was, finally drifted off, her breaths soft and even. Minjay glanced at her, the dashboard lights casting shadows on her peaceful face. For the first time in years, the weight of command felt heavier, laced with an unfamiliar urgency. Who was Ilara, and what debt or danger had her pointing a child straight into his world? As the penthouse loomed ahead, its glass facade a monolith against the night, a distant figure caught his eye in the side mirror, a shadow slipping behind a parked van, vanishing into the whiteout. Watcher, or just the storm playing tricks? Minjay accelerated, the tires spinning briefly on ice, his grip ironclad. Whatever this was, it had just dragged him into a game he hadn't chosen, and the first move was already in play. The penthouse elevator hummed upward, a sleek cage of polished steel and mirrored walls that reflected Minjay's tense profile back at him a dozen times over. Lila stirred in his arms, her small head lolling against his shoulder, the scent of damp snow clinging to her braids like a faint earthy perfume. The warmth inside the building was a stark relief from the storm's bite, but it did little to ease the knot in his gut. That shadow in the mirror, too deliberate to be wind-whipped snow, too fleeting for a drunk stumbling home. He adjusted his hold on the girl, his free hand hovering near the concealed pistol at his waistband, the metal cool through his shirt. The doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing the expansive foyer of his safe house. Marble floors gleamed under recessed lights, and the air carried the subtle hum of the ventilation system, laced with the faint ozone tang of surveillance electronics. Two guards, broad-shouldered men in tailored suits, earpieces coiled like snakes, snapped to attention. Ji-hoon, his second in command, emerged from the shadows of the hallway, his sharp eyes narrowing at the bundle in Minjay's arms. "Boss!" Ji-hoon said, voice low and clipped, falling into step as Minjay strode toward the living room. "Convoy's still iced in. What's this?" "Door. Found her on the roadside," Minjay replied, laying Lila gently on the oversized leather couch. The room was a fortress, disguised as opulence. Floor-to-ceiling windows tinted against prying eyes, overlooking the churning Han River far below, where dock lights pierced the blizzard like distant stars. A sideboard held decanters of soju and whiskey, but Minjay ignored them, kneeling to check the girl's pulse, steady if rapid. "Says her name's Lila. Mother sent her to me. Ilara, from the Blue Lotus." Ji-hoon's brow furrowed, his fingers already tapping at his phone. "Ilara? The American waitress? Keeps to herself, tips well but doesn't mingle. No debts on record with us." He glanced at Lila, who whimpered softly in her sleep, her tiny fists clutching the edge of Minjay's coat. "Kid's half frozen. You think it's a plant? Rivals using innocence to get close?" Minjay stood, rolling his shoulders to shake off the chill that lingered in his bones. The river's murmur filtered through the triple-paned glass, a constant reminder of the waterways that funneled his shipments, containers of electronics that hid everything from counterfeit luxury goods to black-market pharmaceuticals. His code had always been ironclad: family first, threats neutralized before they breached the perimeter. But this, a child invoking his name like a talisman, it cracked something open, echoing the void left by his daughter's death 5 years prior, a hit meant for him, collateral in a turf war over Inchen's smuggling lanes. "Run her plate," Minjay said, nodding toward the window. "That shadow by the van downstairs, get eyes on it. Cameras thermal if the snow's not blinding them." He pulled out his burner, dialing a contact at the Blue Lotus. The line crackled. The club's manager picking up on the third ring, his voice oily with false deference. "Kang, to what do I owe—" "Ilara," Minjay cut in, pacing the room, the wool rug muffling his steps. Persian, imported, details that grounded him in a world of calculated excess. "Where is she?" A pause, the background thump of bass and laughter filtering through. "Ilara? Didn't show tonight. Called in sick. Said something about the kid. Why? You got a beef?" Minjay's grip tightened. "Sick or vanished? Just checking tabs. If she surfaces, you hold her. No questions." He hung up, the click echoing like a loaded chamber. Jihoon was already on it, murmuring into his radio. "Sweep the garage, black van, plate ending in 7-2, and pull manifests from the docks. Any unusual pickups near the river tonight?" Lila stirred then, her eyes blinking open to the unfamiliar grandeur. The room's ambient lighting cast warm glows on the abstract paintings, sleek lines evoking coiled dragons, and the faint scent of sandalwood from a hidden diffuser. She sat up slowly, the oversized coat pooling around her like a cape, and rubbed her face with chubby hands. "Where's Mommy?" Her voice was small, threaded with that island lilt, but her gaze locked on Minjay with unnerving clarity. He crouched to her level, keeping his tone even, like coaxing a skittish informant. "She's safe, Lila. We're figuring it out. Why'd she tell you to find me?" The girl fidgeted, her mismatched mittens twisting in her lap. "Bad men came, at our place by the market. Mommy said they wanted money, but she didn't have it. Told me to run, find the Dragon Man. He'd help 'cause he's good inside." She pointed again to his wrist, the tattoo peeking from his cuff like a secret shared. Jihoon shot Minjay a look. Good inside? The syndicate's rep was steel and shadows, not fairy tales. Minjay's mind churned. Debts at the Blue Lotus often tied back to loans from rival crews, like the Lee faction out of Seoul, who muscled into Busan's ports last season. A shakedown gone wrong? Or something personal? Ilara tangled in a web she'd woven herself. "Get her some hot tea. Clothes," Minjay ordered Jihoon, who nodded and vanished toward the kitchen, the door swinging shut with a whisper. Alone with the girl, Minjay sat on the coffee table, the wood cool under his palms. "What bad men? Describe them." Lila's lower lip trembled, but she straightened, brave in her exhaustion. "One had a scar, like this." She traced a line down her cheek. "Drove a blue truck, said Mommy owed for the boat ride here." "Boat ride? Smugglers then? Illegals ferried from the Philippines or worse, funneled through the yellow sea routes Minjay controlled. If Ilara had stiffed a coyote, it could draw heat from independents, the kind who didn't care about syndicates. His phone buzzed, Jihoon's text. "Van's a rental, paid cash." Driver logged as Kim, no hits. But Cams caught a second figure, female, hooded, watching your approach. Slipped into the storm. Minjay's blood ran colder than the snow outside. A tale, coordinated. He stood, moving to the window, peering through the tint at the whiteout below. The river churned, black and unforgiving, its surface flecked with ice flows that bumped like warnings. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their flashlights cutting arcs through the flurry, but visibility was nil. If Ilara was in play, this wasn't random, it was a hook, baited with a child's trust. Lila yawned, curling back under the blankets, oblivious to the tightening noose. Minjae's reflection stared back from the glass, the dragon on his wrist, a reminder of vows unbroken. Protect the vulnerable, even if it meant wading into the fray. But as a distant siren wailed through the storm, police or ambulance, hard to tell, he wondered if Ilara's plea was salvation or the spark that would ignite a war. And who was the hooded watcher, closing in under cover of the blizzard? The storm's fury rattled the penthouse windows like an impatient fist, the wind howling through the Han River Valley as if mourning secrets long buried. Minjae paced the living room, the marble floor cold beneath his shoes, each step echoing the calculated rhythm of his thoughts. Lila slept soundly now, tucked into a guest room with fresh linens and a space heater humming softly, its warm glow chasing away the last traces of her roadside chill. Jihoon had returned with a tray of steaming chamomile tea and a bowl of rice porridge, but the girl had only managed a few sips before exhaustion claimed her again. Her words lingered, though: a scar-faced man, a blue truck, debts from a boat ride. Threads in a tapestry Minjae knew too well, woven from the smuggling lanes that snaked across the Yellow Sea. He sank into the leather armchair by the window, the river below a dark ribbon flecked with ice, its surface reflecting the sporadic flashes of dock cranes like distant lightning. The air inside carried the faint, comforting scent of ginger from the kitchen, mingling with the metallic tang of his burner phone as he scrolled through encrypted messages. Jihoon stood nearby, arms crossed, his face a mask of professional detachment honed from years of navigating Busan's shadowed alliances. "Cams from the garage show the van's gone," he reported, voice low to avoid waking the child. Thermal picked up 2 heat signatures fleeing on foot toward the river path, likely the watcher and a spotter. No plates on the second vehicle, but it was a sedan, older model, mud-splattered like it came from the outskirts. Minjae nodded, his mind mapping the logistics. The river paths were a smuggler's vein, narrow trails used for offloading crates under cover of night. Electronics, narcotics, desperate migrants paying passage with everything they owned. If Ilara had crossed paths with independents, coyotes operating outside syndicate control, it explained the shakedown. But why invoke his name? His dragon tattoo wasn't common knowledge. It marked him to insiders, a symbol of the Kang clan's grip on those very roots. A leak or a calculated gamble, using Lila as a key to his door. "Pull records from the Blue Lotus," Minjae said, rubbing the bridge of his nose, the faint ache of the night's tension settling in. Not just shifts, cross-reference with port manifests. Any boats docking unscheduled in the last month, passengers listed as crew or family? Jihoon dipped his head and stepped into the adjoining office, the door clicking shut like a safe's lock. Alone, Minjae's thoughts drifted to his code, the unspoken vow etched deeper than ink, no innocence harmed, not on his watch. His daughter's face flickered in his memory, 8 years old, caught in the crossfire of a Lee faction ambush at a warehouse on these same docks. That loss had forged him, turning ambition into a blade of precision, pruning threats before they bloomed. But Lila's arrival stirred the ashes, a reminder that power's true weight was in what it shielded, not what it seized. The burner buzzed again, a secure line from a dockside contact. Minjae answered, keeping his voice a gravel whisper. "Talk. Blue Lotus is buzzing." The voice crackled, background noise of clinking glasses and muffled K-pop beats filtering through. Ilara's apartment got hit tonight, placed by the Nampo market. Neighbors heard shouts, then nothing. Cops wrote it off as a domestic, but I saw the blue truck peel out. Scar on the driver's face, matches a low-level enforcer for the Choi's, splinter group from the old Incheon runners. They're squeezing for unpaid fares. Word is she smuggled in with her kid last year, stiffed them on the back end. Min Jae's jaw clenched, the leather armrest creaking under his grip. The Choi were scavengers, picking at the edges of his territory, ferrying migrants and small-time cargo without the muscle to hold it. A debt like that could fester, turning personal vendettas into syndicate sparks. She's alive. Slipped out the back, maybe. No bodies turned up, and the club's manager's twitchy. Says she left a note for you, slipped it under the bar before vanishing. Picked it up myself. A pause, the line hissing like sea spray. It's coded. Dragon guards the lotus. Debt to the sea. Sound familiar? Min Jae's pulse sharpened. The lotus, her workplace, neutral ground. The sea, the roots he ruled. Ilara knew more than a waitress should. Perhaps from overheard deals or a past brush with his world. Bring it here, and eyes on the market. Any sign of that truck, you tail it quiet. He hung up, the room's silence pressing in, broken only by the distant thrum of generators powering the building's security grid. He rose, moving to the guest room door, cracking it open. Lila slept on, her chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. Braids splayed across the pillow like dark rivers. "Mommy said you'd help." The words twisted in him, a mix of suspicion and reluctant pull, autonomy clashing with the instinct to protect, his solitary empire suddenly echoing with the vulnerability of found ties. Ji-hoon re-emerged, tablet in hand, the screen's glow casting blue shadows on his face. Manifests show a fishing trawler, the Sea Blossom. Docked 2 weeks back, unofficial, no cargo logged. Passenger manifest fudged. 1 adult female, 1 child, origin Manila. Matches Ilara's visa stamps. Choi run that boat sometimes, undercutting our lanes. He swiped, pulling up a grainy photo from a port cam. A woman with Lila's features, hooded and hurried, boarding under sodium lights, the river's chill mist curling around her ankles. Min Jae studied it, the image blurring slightly as adrenaline sharpened his focus. Ilara, mid-30s, eyes fierce even in pixels, carrying a duffel that bulged with more than clothes. She'd fled something in the States, perhaps, landing in Korea's underbelly, only to tangle with worse. The debt wasn't just money, it was leverage, the Choi using her to probe his borders, testing if the dragon would stir for a stranger's plea. A sharp crackle from Ji-hoon's earpiece broke the moment, guard rotation reporting in. "Boss, perimeter breach alert. Motion sensors tripped on the east trail. 2 figures, closing on the service entrance. Storms masking them, but one's got a rifle silhouette." Min Jae's hand went to his pistol, the weight familiar as breath. The penthouse's alarms hummed faintly, red lights pulsing on the control panel like warning beacons. Outside, the blizzard whipped harder, sodium lamps flickering as power lines strained. He glanced at Lila's door, the child's trust a chain binding him now. Rally the guards, evacuate, or meet the threat head-on, turning defense into the first strike of his code. As Ji-hoon barked orders into his radio, coordinating a lockdown, Min Jae moved to the window, peering into the white void. Shadows danced at the tree line. Hunters or hunted, it didn't matter. The real question burned. Had Ilara's note been a beacon or a trap, drawing the Chois straight to his door under the cover of snow? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The penthouse's lockdown klaxon pulsed, low and urgent, a red strobe slicing through the dim corridors like a heartbeat under siege. Min Jae's pistol was in his hand before Ji-hoon finished his radio command, the mat grip familiar, its weight a counter to the storm's chaos outside. The wind battered the windows, carrying the salty bite of the Han River mixed with the ozone crackle of strained power lines. He motioned Ji-hoon toward the control room, his voice a razor edge. "Secure the girl. Arm the secondary exits. No one in or out until I say." Ji-hoon nodded, his steps quick and silent on the marble, vanishing down the hall with a burner phone pressed to his ear. Minjay moved to the east-facing window, the tinted glass cool against his palm as he scanned the tree line. Snow swirled in furious eddies, but thermal feeds from the perimeter cams, projected faintly on a wall panel, betrayed the intruders. Two blobs of heat, hunkered low, weaving through the service trail like wolves scenting blood. One paused, rifle slung low, the other gesturing with what looked like a suppressed pistol. Choi's enforcers, no doubt, probing for weakness in the blizzard's blind spots. The service entrance was a vulnerability, meant for discreet deliveries, guarded but not fortified like the main gate. Minjay's mind raced through logistics. The trail led from the riverbank, a smuggler's shortcut he'd tolerated for neutral runners. If the Chois were bold enough to hit here, Ilara's debt was bait, Lila the hook. His code twisted in him, protect the innocent, but at what line? Charging out meant exposure, pulling guards from the penthouse thinned the line. He keyed his radio, voice steady. Team Alpha flank the trail from the south ridge, non-lethal if possible. I want one alive for questions. Affirmatives crackled back, the hum of security radios underscoring the tension like a taut wire. Minjay slipped into the service corridor, the air cooler here, laced with the faint must of concrete and oiled locks. Emergency lights bathed the space in crimson, shadows pooling in the corners where hidden panels concealed escape routes, tunnels bored into the hillside, linking to a convoy garage half a mile down. He'd built this fortress after his daughter's death, every angle calculated against betrayal. But tonight it felt like a cage, the child's soft breaths from the guest room echoing in his ears. A muffled thud echoed from the east door, metal on metal, the intruders testing the jam. Minjay pressed against the wall, pistol raised, breath fogging slightly in the chill. Footsteps scraped outside, snow crunching under boots, then a whisper of voices in Korean, clipped and urgent. Boss said the kid's inside. Grab her, leave the message. The scarred one, probably, his truck idling somewhere in the whiteout, engine growl lost to the gale. Minjay's finger hovered on the trigger, autonomy warring with the pull of Lila's trust. He wasn't a father anymore. Not since the warehouse ambush that stole his world in a hail of silenced rounds. But her words, Mommy said you'd help, stirred the embers, a loyalty he couldn't ignore. He triggered the outer floodlights remotely, the sudden blaze cutting through the storm like a spotlight on a stage. Shouts erupted outside, figures scrambling as Alpha Team closed in, flashlights stabbing the snow. The door rattled harder, a shoulder slamming against it, but the reinforced steel held, bolts groaning under the assault. Minjay waited, counting breaths, the river's distant roar a reminder of the waterways that birthed these threats. Then a sharp crack, glass shattering in the adjacent utility room, wind howling through the breach. He pivoted, moving low toward the sound, the scent of wet pine and gun oil sharpening the air. There, in the dim glow, a hooded figure dropped through the broken pane, landing in a crouch amid shattered shards that glittered like ice. Not the scar-faced brute, slimmer, movements fluid. Female. She straightened, pistols sweeping the room, eyes darting under the hood. Minjay stepped from cover, barrel trained. "Drop it! Now!" She froze, breath ragged, snow melting in dark curls escaping her hood. Recognition flickered in her eyes, fierce, guarded, the same from the port cam. Ilara. Up close she was striking, mid-30s, skin warm-toned against the cold, a duffel slung over her shoulder, bulging with desperation. "Kang," she whispered, voice laced with that island accent, steady despite the standoff. "Don't shoot. I came for my daughter." Minjay's grip didn't waver, but his pulse betrayed him, thudding with the shock of it. The woman who'd sent a child into the storm, invoking his name like a shield. "Blue Lotus. The note, you led them here." Her eyes flashed defiance, lowering the pistol slowly to the floor, hands raised. "The Chois. They hit my apartment, said the debt's due, or Lila pays. I overheard them at the club. Knew your tattoo from a deal gone south last year. You run the routes clean, no kids harmed. I gambled you'd honor that." She glanced toward the corridor, worry etching lines around her mouth. "The scar-faced ones outside with a crew. They're not independents. They're tied to the Lees now, pushing into Busan. Used my smuggling run to bait you, test if the dragon bites." Outside, gunfire popped, suppressed bursts, Alpha Team's response. Shouts cut through the wind, the storm turning the skirmish into a muffled chaos. Ji-hoon's voice barked over the radio. "One down on the trail, second fleeing toward the river, kids secure." Min-jae lowered his weapon fractionally, suspicion coiling like smoke. Trust versus the betrayal he'd seen too often, ambition cloaked as alliance. But her eyes held no lie, only the raw edge of a mother's fear mirroring his own buried loss. "Why me? Debts like yours end in the river." Ilara stepped closer, the duffel thumping to the floor, revealing glimpses of cash-stuffed envelopes and a forged passport. "Because you're not like them. The code, I've seen it. Vows kept, even to strangers." Her voice softened, the pull of shared vulnerability hanging between them. "Lila needs out. We both do." The utility room door shuddered as another guard burst in, rifle leveled, but Min-jae waved him off. The fight outside ebbed, the intruder's heat signatures scattering on the cams, retreating into the blizzard. Mission botched but message sent. Ilara's arrival wasn't salvation, it was ignition, drawing lines in the snow between his world and hers. As Ji-hoon appeared, cuffing the downed enforcer dragged in from the trail, scar-faced, spitting curses, Min-jae holstered his pistol, the weight of decision settling. Protect them, or cut the thread before it bound him too tight. Ilara met his gaze, unyielding, the river's chill seeping through the broken glass like an omen. But in the distance, a convoy's low rumble pierced the storm, his delayed team arriving just as the true war loomed. Who had tipped the choice to her gamble, and what price would his code demand now? The penthouse's utility room felt smaller now, the broken window framing a swirling vortex of snow that dusted the floor like ash from a dying fire. Min-jae's guards hauled the scar-faced enforcer deeper into the corridor, his curses muffled by zip ties biting into his wrists. The metallic tang of blood mixing with the chill air seeping in. Ilara stood rigid, her duffel at her feet, eyes flicking between Min-jae and the chaos she'd ignited. The river's roar below thrummed like a warning pulse, its icy currents carrying whispers of the yellow sea routes where debts like hers were settled, bodies vanishing into the depths, no traces on manifests. Ji-hoon reappeared, wiping snow from his coat, his breath visible in ragged puffs. "Convoys pulling up, 3 SUVs, armed heavy. The trail's clear, but they left a burner in the snow. Activated, pinging a tower near the Nampo docks." He nodded at Ilara, suspicion etching his features. "She's clean, no wire, but that bag's loaded. Cash, docks, you vouching, boss." Min-jae's gaze locked on Ilara, the weight of her words pressing against his code like a blade to the throat. Vows kept, even to strangers. She'd gambled on his reputation, threading a child's life through the needle of his guarded world. Autonomy clashed with the pull in his chest, an echo of his daughter's laughter, long silenced by a rival's bullet in that rain-slicked warehouse. "Talk," he said to her, voice low, gesturing to the living room. "Everything, starting with the boat." She followed, steps measured, the duffel slung over her shoulder, bumping against her hip like a reluctant confession. The living room's warmth enveloped them, the space heater's hum underscoring the tension, sandalwood diffusing faintly against the storm's brine. Lila's door remained shut, a guard posted outside, his radio crackling with perimeter sweeps. Ilara sank onto the couch, peeling back her hood to reveal sweat-dampened curls, framing a face etched with exhaustion and resolve. "Manila last year. I was running from an ex, deadbeat, tied to some stateside crew shaking down immigrants. Lila and I needed out. The Choi's advertised a clean ride. 20K, no questions, drop in Busan. I scraped it together waitressing back home, but midway across the sea, the captain jacked the price, said extras for the kid. I refused. They docked us rough, left us with the debt hanging like a noose. Minjay leaned against the sideboard, arms crossed, the decanters glinting under the low lights like forgotten allies. His mind pieced the logistics, the Sea Blossom, that ghost trawler on the manifests, slipping through his patrols by hugging fishing lanes. The Choi's weren't bold enough to challenge him directly. This was probing, using her as a wedge to fracture his control over the ports. And the Lees, you said they're backing it. She nodded, fingers twisting the duffel's strap, the leather creaking softly. Overheard it at the Blue Lotus. Neutral ground, right? Scarface and a soul accent, trading shots of soju. They're merging, pushing south to undercut your shipments. My debt's their excuse to hit close, see if you'd blink. I slipped the note to your contact there, figured the dragon code would pull you in. No innocence. Her eyes met his, steady, a spark of something unspoken. Gratitude laced with the wariness of two worlds colliding. I didn't expect the kid to end up on your doorstep. Storm grounded the buses. She must have walked from the market after they trashed our place. Ji-hoon snorted from the doorway, tablet in hand, scrolling encrypted feeds. Burner's got a log, text to a Choi number, then forwarded to a Lee burner in Seoul. Target acquired, dragon engaged. They knew you'd pick her up. He glanced at Minjay, loyalty sharpening his tone. This pulls us into their game. We extract or cut loose? The question hung, heavy as the snow piling against the windows. Minjay's code demanded protection, but prudence whispered retreat, his empire built on calculated risks, not maternal gambles. Ilara's presence stirred the conflict, her independence a mirror to his own armored solitude. Yet her plea tugged at the frayed edges of trust he'd buried deep. Outside, the convoy's engines growled to a halt in the garage below, tires crunching ice, doors slamming like punctuation to the night's unraveling. Extract, Minjay decided, the word tasting of commitment. But we move smart. Ji-hoon, vet the Choi's next play. Shipping logs, guard rotations at their dockside warehouse. No direct hit. Shadow them. He turned to Ilara, his voice softening fractionally, the river's murmur filtering through like a shared secret. Lila stays here. Safe. You too, until we clear the board. She exhaled, shoulders easing, but her eyes held a pushback, autonomy flaring against his command. I'm no damsel, Kang. I pulled my weight on that boat, fought off handsy crew. We go together, or not at all. The air between them thickened, possessiveness warring with her fire. Attention electric as the storm's static. Before he could respond, Ji-hoon's radio spat urgency. Boss, anomaly on cams. Power flicker in the east grid. Looks like a staged blackout. Lines cut near the river trail. The room's lights dimmed briefly, then steadied, but the control panel blinked warnings. Jammed service door, sensors blind in sectors 2 and 4. Rising tension coiled tighter. The Choi weren't fleeing. They were regrouping, using the blizzard to mask an infiltration. Distant shouts echoed from the perimeter, guards coordinating, the hum of generators kicking in with a low rumble. Minjay drew his pistol again, motioning Ilara toward Lila's room. Stay put, this isn't over. She grabbed her duffel, defiance in her stride, but paused at the door. Her hand brushing his arm, a fleeting touch, warm against the cold metal of his resolve. Your code saved us once. Don't let it cost you now. As she slipped inside, the door clicking shut, Minjay joined Ji-hoon at the window, peering into the whiteout. Shadows shifted at the tree line again, more heat signatures, 3 this time, closing on the blackout zone. The environment turned hazardous. The storm's howl, masking footsteps, wind-whipping sodium lights into erratic strobes on wet asphalt below. A botched escort could turn deadly. His convoy was bottled in the garage, extraction delayed by iced ramps. Ji-hoon checked his clip, voice tight. They're forcing a siege. Warehouse next door's theirs. Old shipping manifests show arms cached there. We hold or push. Min Jae's grip tightened on the pistol, the dragon tattoo flexing like a living thing. Loyalty to his code meant facing the fray, but Ilara's words echoed. Cost. The true threat organized, victory demanding sacrifice, exposure to the Lees, perhaps a guard down, or worse, the fragile trust he'd just forged shattering under pressure. As a muffled explosion rocked the east wing, flashbang, not lethal, but the signal clear. Min Jae wondered if the choice's tip came from within, a turncoat in his ranks leaking the penthouse's weak points. And how far would he go to shield the family he'd found in the snow? The penthouse plunged into a stuttering half-darkness, the staged blackout rippling through the east grid like a vein clotting under pressure. Emergency generators kicked in with a guttural whine, casting the living room in the harsh red glow of backup lights, shadows elongating across the marble like fingers reaching for purchase. Min Jae's pistol felt heavier in his hand, the dragon tattoo on his wrist coiling tighter as adrenaline sharpened every sense, the faint crackle of radio static, the metallic bite of gun oil in the air, the distant thud of boots on iced concrete below. Outside, the blizzard masked the intruder's advance, wind howling through the Han River Valley, whipping sodium lamps into frantic strobes that danced on snow-slicked asphalt. Ji-hoon crouched by the control panel, fingers flying over the touchscreen, pulling up fragmented feeds from the perimeter cams. East sensors are jammed, EMP pulse, low-grade, probably from a handheld rig. Choi's scavenged that tech from old port security, blinds thermals for a 10-minute window. His voice was clipped, eyes narrowing at the flickering map, 3 heat signatures converging on the service entrance, a 4th lingering by the river trail, rifle silhouette unmistakable. The convoy in the garage revved engines, trapped by iced ramps that the storm had turned into sheer walls. Extraction delayed as guards chipped at the frozen barriers with heated tools. Min Jae moved to the window, peering through the frost-etched tint, the river below a churning black moor flecked with ice flows, bumping like ominous driftwood. The warehouse next door loomed in the whiteout, Choi territory, its rusted siding hiding cached arms from shipping manifests he'd long monitored, crates labeled fishing gear that concealed suppressed rifles and burner kits. This wasn't a probe. It was infiltration, the blackout a diversion to force a breach. His code, burned in his chest, protect the vulnerable, no innocents caught in the crossfire. But suspicion gnawed the precise timing of the pulse. Knowledge of the East Grid's weak node. A turncoat, Ji-hoon's loyalty was ironclad, forged in the warehouse bloodbath that took his daughter, but the ranks below, human error, or worse, ambition whispering deals with the Lees. Flank them from the south ridge, Min Jae ordered into his radio, voice steady as granite. Use the tunnel access, quiet, no lights. I want the leader. Affirmatives buzzed back, the hum of security channels underscoring the rising tension, like a fuse hissing toward ignition. He glanced toward Lila's door, where Ilara had barricaded herself with the child, her duffel now a makeshift barrier against the door. Her touch lingered on his arm, warm, defiant, a push-pull that clashed with his possessiveness, her independence a spark against his armored control. She wasn't his to command, yet the instinct to shield her warred with the fear of drawing her deeper into his shadowed legacy. A sharp crack echoed from the east corridor, the service door buckling under a breaching charge, muffled by the storm but unmistakable, the scent of cordite seeping through vents like a bitter fog. Footsteps pounded, guards shouting in Korean, the pop-pop of suppressed fire cutting through the gale. Min Jae pivoted, joining Ji-hoon as they advanced low along the hallway, pistols sweeping the crimson-lit turns. The penthouse's architecture turned against them now. Wide corridors meant for opulence, not defense, echoes amplifying every scuff and breath. They rounded the corner to the utility breach, glass shards crunching underfoot like brittle ice. Two intruders spilled in, a burly Choi gunman, face obscured by a balaclava, rifle chattering bursts that splintered a wall panel, and a wiry accomplice fumbling a second charge. Min-jae fired twice, precise shots to the legs, dropping the leader with a guttural cry that echoed off the concrete. Ji-hoon covered, his round clipping the second man's shoulder, sending him sprawling into the snow-dusted threshold. No kills. His code held even here, victory demanding restraint amid the chaos. The gunman groaned, clutching his thigh, blood pooling dark on the floor, the metallic tang mixing with the chill draft. Min-jae knelt, pressing his boot to the wound, pistol trained. Who sent the tip? Your crew knew the grid, inside job? The man's eyes widened behind the mask, accent thick with inch and grit. Lee Alliance? Your own man's talking. Warehouse guard owes gambling debts. Said the woman's kid was the key. Draw the dragon out. Betrayal confirmed, a subtle behavioral tell Min-jae had missed. The guard's off-shift absences, covered as family visits. Human error. Institutional limits, his empire's underbelly exposed. Ji-hoon zip-tied the man, dragging him toward the holding room, radioing for medics. Non-lethal hits, secure the fourth on the trail. Outside, the skirmish ebbed. Alpha team closing the net, but the blackout lingered, power flickering as lines strained under the storm's assault. Ilara emerged then, Lila clutched to her side, the girl's eyes wide, but trusting in the red glow. We heard the shots. Is it over? Ilara's voice trembled slightly, her free hand gripping a concealed knife from the duffel, prudence laced with fierce autonomy, her ethics clashing against the fear of reliance. Min-jae holstered his pistol, the weight of exposure settling. The Lees now had confirmation of his involvement. A cost in stretched resources. Guards injured in the fray, one with a grazing wound, bandaged hastily, his loyalty tested but intact. Not yet, Min-jae replied, his gaze softening on Lila, who reached for him with small, mittened hands. The warehouse. They're holding position. Convoys breaking free. We extract at dawn. Hit their manifests first. No loose ends. He met Ilara's eyes. The pull between them, electric. Loyalty forged in the breach, suspicion yielding to shared stakes. Her nod was reluctant. A vow unspoken, trust built on what they'd overcome, not blind faith. As the generators steadied, bathing the hall in steadier light, Ji-hoon returned, burner in hand. Intercepted message from the downed man's phone, Lee's calling in reinforcements from Seoul. Armored van, ETA 2 hours. And the turncoat? He's bolting. Cams caught him slipping toward the docks. The revelation hung, organized threat real and closing, victory's price in sacrifice, a guard's exposure, the fragile family now targets in his war. Min-jae's jaw tightened, the river's roar swelling like applause for the fray ahead. Dawn's extraction loomed, but with the turncoat loose, what secrets would he spill to shatter their fragile sanctuary? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The penthouse's red emergency lights pulsed like a fading heartbeat, casting elongated shadows across the corridor where the downed intruders lay zip-tied and groaning. Min-jae's boots crunched over scattered glass shards. Each step, a deliberate anchor against the storm's relentless assault outside. The air hung heavy with the acrid bite of cordite and melting snow, the Han River's muffled roar seeping through the breached utility room like an uninvited witness. Ji-hoon knelt by the captured gunman, extracting the burner phone with gloved hands, its screen cracked but alive, glowing with the intercepted message that confirmed the betrayal. The turncoat, Park, a mid-level guard with a gambling habit Min-jae had overlooked as minor human error, had fled toward the docks, his path a blur on the fragmented cams, swallowed by the blizzard's white veil. "Seal the breaches," Min-jae ordered, his voice cutting through the low hum of generators straining against the blackout's aftershocks. "Ji-hoon, trace that phone's last ping. Convoy preps for immediate rollout, tunnel access only, no surface roads till we flush him." He glanced at Ilara, who stood in the doorway to Lila's room, the child peeking from behind her legs, small fingers clutching her mother's coat. Ilara's eyes burned with a mix of fear and resolve, her knife sheathed now, but the tension in her stance screaming autonomy, refusing to be sidelined in the chaos she'd sparked. "You and the girl stay in the safe core. Guards on rotation." Ilara's jaw set, her island lilt sharpening with defiance. "We're not hiding while you chase ghosts. Park knows our faces now. Lila's too. If he's spilling to the lees, they come for us first." She shifted the duffel higher on her shoulder, its weight a symbol of her independence, stuffed with the last scraps of her old life. Forged papers, cash from Blue Lotus tips, a locket with Lila's baby photo. The push-pull between them crackled, Min-jae's possessive instinct to shield clashing with her unyielding ethics. Loyalty to her daughter demanding she stand ground rather than cower. Ji-hoon rose, pocketing the burner, his face etched with the weariness of a night stretched thin. Pings bouncing off a tower at the Choi warehouse, old shipping hub by the East Docks. He's heading there, likely to offload intel for a payout. Manifests show their night crews light. 2 guards, rotating every hour. But the storms grounded their patrols. He tapped his earpiece, coordinating with the convoy leads below, engines rumbling faintly through the floor like distant thunder. The environment turned treacherous. Iced ramps blocked the garage exits, forcing reliance on the hillside tunnels. Narrow veins carved for smuggling runs, now a bottleneck under blackout conditions. Min-jae nodded, holstering his pistol but keeping the spare in his coat pocket. The metal's chill, a reminder of costs mounting. The injured guard in the medbay, bandaged from a stray round, his loyalty intact, but the syndicate's institutional limits exposed. Betrayal like Park's stemmed from ambition's whisper, gambling debts turning a man against the code that had sustained him. Min-jae's own legacy weighed heavier, the dragon tattoo, a vow to prune such weaknesses, shaped by the warehouse loss that stole his daughter, teaching him power's true restraint lay in foresight, not force. But Ilara's arrival tested it, her trust a fragile bridge over suspicion's chasm. "Move out," Min-jae said, signaling 2 guards to escort Ilara and Lila deeper into the penthouse core, a reinforced panic room, with its own air and monitors, stocked for sieges. Lila whimpered, reaching out as they passed, her mismatched mittens brushing Min-jae's sleeve. "You coming back, Dragon Man?" Her voice, small amid the chaos, tugged at him, fear laced with the innocence that demanded his protection. He knelt briefly, the wool rug muffling the moment, the faint scent of chamomile tea from earlier clinging to her, sooner than the snow melts. "Stay with Mommy." Ilara met his gaze over the child's head, a silent acknowledgement, gratitude warring with her fear of dependence, the bond forming not from possession, but shared peril. The group splintered. Ji-hoon and Min-jae descending via the service elevator to the tunnel access, the cage rattling as it plunged into the hillside's underbelly. The air grew damp and cool, laced with the earthy tang of concrete and distant river brine. Fluorescent strips flickering to life along the narrow passage. It was a smuggler's artery, lined with reinforced doors and emergency caches, flashlights, medkits, encrypted radios. But the storm's vibrations hummed through the walls, loose gravel pattering like warning shots. Surveillance was sparse here. Motion sensors tripped remotely, feeding to Ji-hoon's tablet, but the blackout had glitched them, leaving blind spots where Park could lurk. They emerged at the tunnel's mouth near the docks, snow blasting in like a white fury, the Han River's sodium-lit expanse stretching before them under erratic lamps. The Choi warehouse squatted 200 meters east, a hulking silhouette of corrugated metal and stacked containers, its loading bays yawning dark, the faint hum of a standby generator underscoring the isolation. Wind whipped flurries across wet asphalt, turning the ground treacherous, boots slipping on ice-slicked puddles that reflected the storm's chaos. Ji-hoon checked the tablet, thermal feed patchy but showing 2 figures inside. Park's lanky frame pacing near a ledger-strewn office, the scar-faced enforcer from earlier gesturing with a burner phone. He's handing over access codes, our penthouse grid, guard rotations. If the Lees get that, it's open season on the routes. A botched intercept could expose them, distant watchers from rival perches along the riverbank, scopes glinting faintly through the veil. Min-jae drew his pistol, suppressor screwed on with a soft click, the cold seeping through his gloves. We take the side entrance, guard rotations in 5. Quiet. They advanced low, hugging the container stacks, the metallic clang of wind-battered chains masking their steps. Human conflict boiled in Min-jae's veins, loyalty to his code versus the fear of loss, Ilara's fire challenging his solitary command. What if Park's spill included her debt's details, turning Lila into leverage? As they neared the door, a subtle tell betrayed them, a loose chain rattling not from wind, but a tripped sensor inside. The door burst open, Park's silhouette filling the frame, eyes wild with desperation. "Boss, wait, it's me!" But behind him, the scar-faced man leveled a rifle, the warehouse's interior spilling yellow light laced with the oily scent of stacked crates. Min-jae fired first, a suppressed pop dropping the enforcer's arm, but Park bolted into the snow, vanishing toward the river path. Ji-hoon pursued, radio crackling. "He's heading for a boat! Small skiff moored at the East Pier!" The chase ignited, environment hazardous as the pier's wooden planks groaned under ice, waves slapping black against pilings, threatening to sweep them into the current. Min-jae sprinted after, pistol raised, the storm's howl drowning shouts. Park reached the skiff, fumbling the mooring line, but slipped on the frosted dock, crashing down with a crack that echoed like breaking bone. Min-jae closed in, boot pinning the man's chest, the river's chill spray misting their faces. "The codes! Where'd you send them?" Park gasped, snowflakes melting on his lashes, fear cracking his bravado. "Lees, already en route, armored convoy, 20 minutes. They know about the woman. The kid said it's personal now, debt collection with interest." His eyes darted, betrayal's weight evident, ambition crumbling under the code's unyielding gaze. Ji-hoon arrived, cuffing him roughly, but Min-jae's mind raced ahead. The ledger inside the warehouse, half open on a crate revealing shipping manifests, Lee's signatures intertwined with Choi's, an organized alliance probing his borders. Victory here cost exposure. Park's spill had lit the fuse, forcing a defensive pivot, as sirens wailed distantly, police drawn by the storm's anomalies or Lee's diversion. Min-jae hauled the turncoat up, the skiff rocking violently. But in the warehouse shadows, a overlooked burner blinked, incoming call from Seoul. What orders had the Lees whispered to their pawn? And would the convoy reach the penthouse before the noose tightened? The skiff rocked violently against the pier's pilings, waves slapping black and insistent, their salty spray mingling with the snow's relentless descent. Min-jae's boot pressed harder into Park's chest, the turncoat's labored breaths fogging the frigid air. His face, a pale mask of regret under the erratic strobe of a distant dock light. The warehouse loomed behind them, its open door spilling faint yellow glow across the iced planks, the ledger's pages fluttering like trapped birds in the draft. Ji-hoon secured the cuffs tighter, the zip ties rasp cutting through the wind's howl. While scanning the burner phone's screen, messages time-stamped minutes ago, coordinates pinpointing the penthouse, guard rotations listed in cold detail. "Convoy's 10 minutes out," Ji-hoon muttered, voice low against the river's roar. "Armored, 6 men, Lee's signature, black SUVs, plates scrubbed. They're coming for the extraction point, using the blackout to jam our South Ridge cams." He pocketed the device, hauling Park up roughly. The man's stumble sending ripples across the water. The environment conspired against them. The pier's wood groaned under shifting ice. Visibility nil beyond 10 feet, the storm masking any trailing engines. Distant watchers, Lee's spotters on the opposite bank perhaps, could pick them off if they lingered. Min-jae's mind churned through logistics. The tunnel back to the penthouse was their lifeline, but Park's spill meant compromised access codes, doors that could lock them out or worse, trap them inside. His code demanded retribution, but protection came first. Ilara and Lila were the vulnerability now, their trust a chain he couldn't sever. "Get him in the skiff," he ordered, pistols sweeping the shadows. "We use the river, flank the convoy from the water. Call the penthouse, full lockdown, evacuate to the core if breached." Ji-hoon nodded, shoving Park aboard, the boat's hull scraping wood as they cast off. The outboard motor coughed to life, a low growl lost in the gale, propelling them into the Han's churning current. Snow lashed their faces, the cold biting like needles. The scent of diesel and brine thickened their lungs. Min-jae gripped the rail, eyes straining for the penthouse's silhouette upstream. A glass monolith now silhouetted against the whiteout, its lower lights flickering as the blackout pulsed anew. Park slumped in the bow, shivering, his betrayal a human fracture. Gambling debts to underground rings tied to the Lees, a subtle tell in his evasive glances during briefings. The burner in Ji-hoon's hand buzzed, an incoming alert from the penthouse feed. "Ilara's holding the core. Guards report contact. 2 on the east trail, suppressed fire. Convoy splitting. 3 vehicles circling the perimeter, the rest pushing the garage." Tension coiled tighter, the river's hazardous sway threatening to capsize them. Ice flows bumping the hull like blind warnings. Min-jae keyed his radio, the static crackling. "Ji-hoon, take the wheel. I'm calling the secondary team. Dockside reinforcements, 5 minutes out." As the skiff cut through the waves, the penthouse grew larger, its windows reflecting the chaos like fractured mirrors. Gunfire popped faintly from the hills. Muffled bursts, no graphic echoes, just the sharp reports underscoring the race. Ilara's voice broke through on a patched line, strained but steady. "They're at the service door, codes working. Lila's scared, but we're barricaded. Hurry." Her words fueled him, the push-pull of her autonomy yielding to necessity, loyalty forging in the fray. They beached hard against a concealed inlet below the hillside, the impact jarring bones, snow swallowing their boots as they dragged Park up the slick path. The tunnel mouth yawned dark, but Min-jae overrode the compromised lock with a manual bypass. A hidden failsafe, his foresight against institutional limits. Inside, the damp air pressed close, the faint hum of emergency conduits guiding them. Park wheezed behind, guarded by Ji-hoon's glare. "The Lees want the roots," he gasped, voice breaking. "Your shipments. They'll undercut with the manifests I gave. The woman's debt was just the spark." Min-jae didn't respond, pistol ready as they emerged into the penthouse's lower levels. Alarms wailed, red lights pulsing, the scent of scorched wiring from the blackout, mingling with sweat and tension. Guards held the corridor, one nursing a shallow arm wound. Cost of the defense. Exposure in manpower stretched thin. The climax erupted at the core door. 2 Lees enforcers, faces hooded, prying at the reinforced panel with a hydraulic tool scavenged from warehouse runs, their movements betrayed by a guard's intercepted radio chatter. Min-jae fired low, disabling the tool with a precise shot. Ji-hoon covering as reinforcements poured in from the docks, tires screeching on iced ramps, now cleared by the arriving convoy. The enforcers scattered, one caught in a tackle, the other fleeing into the storm through a jammed exit, his silhouette vanishing into the white. No kills, but the cost mounted. The penthouse's grid fried beyond quick repair, secrets spilled to rivals. A guard's injury demanding triage in the medbay. Ilara cracked the core door, Lila in her arms, the child's face buried in her shoulder. "It's over?" Ilara asked, eyes searching Minjay's, the knife still in her belt, a symbol of her independence now holstered in trust. Minjay holstered his weapon, the weight lifting fractionally as the generators steadied, lights flickering back to life. For now, the threat was organized. Lees and Choi's merged, using your debt to fracture my lines. Park's codes gave them the edge, but we've got the manifests, the turncoat. Victory's extraction, you're out, new papers, a safe house in Incheon till the roots stabilize. He glanced at Lila, who reached for him again, her small hand warm against the cold. The true treasure crystallized, not the spoils of power, but the protection earned, trust woven from suspicion, a found family emerging from the snow's crucible. Park was hauled away for questioning, his betrayal a sacrifice to prune the syndicate's rot. Ilara stepped closer, her hand brushing Minjay's, a pledge unspoken, autonomy bending to shared legacy. "Your code held. We owe you." He shook his head, the river's murmur filtering through repaired vents like a fading echo. Debts end here, but the family's just beginning. In the quiet aftermath, as dawn's grey light pierced the storm's remnants, Minjay stood at the window, the Han River calming below, ice flows drifting like shed burdens. The adventure's scars lingered, injured guards healing, exposed flanks demanding vigilance, but loyalty outlasted the raw power of syndicates. Memory of Lila's plea, Ilara's fire, bound tighter than any tattoo, transforming solitary command into chosen ties. The dragon guarded not just roots, but the fragile warmth of what he'd nearly lost again. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.